So for this, we're going to be using Final Draft. And as you can see, we have the Screenplay templates. So again, we will talk about templates when I do a particular module on that, when it comes to the very basics of using the program Final Draft and choosing Final Draft, because there are other options that you can use for screenplay writing. But this is the industry standard. It's what I've used for the past 16, 17 years of my 20 years doing screenwriting, and it has not failed me. So I would highly recommend that everybody who's interested in becoming a professional screenwriter or writing screenplays in general, use Final Draft. So you get your plain screen, and the first thing that you would do is create what is known as a slug line. Now, a slug line is the scene header, so to speak. It tells the audience, or rather it tells the director or the producer or the reader of your script whether the scene you're going to write is occurring indoors or outdoors. That's the first thing. And there is a hybrid which is called interior-exterior, when a scene is occurring both interior, inside a building or car, or outside a building or car. So a good way of thinking of interior-exterior is if, you know, there's a conversation with somebody in a vehicle and somebody is walking on the street, and the scene is swapping between those two situations. We'll deal with that afterwards. But the first thing you do on Final Draft is you just type I, and when you type I, it auto inputs the options that you have starting with I. And remember, I told you about interior, exterior. So interior, exterior is an option there, but interior is the base definer for an interior scene. So once you see that, you don't even have to type INT, you just see it in there and you type return, and it puts it in there for you. Now, after you do your interior, you would then describe the scene that you are going to be writing. So let's just say interior main house, and then you would do a hyphen, and then you would say whether this is daytime, nighttime, evening, afternoon, morning. So I usually just go with day or night personally, but you can do afternoon, evening, or whatever time of day you want, but that is where you put your time of day. And after you put your time of day, you then hit return again, and this is the next part of a screenplay structure. And this is your action section. So the beauty of Final Draft is that if you go back here, it is automatically, let's say I'm typing all of this, it is automatically going to capitalize everything for the slug line, which is always capitalized. So it's automatic. When you press return, it formats it for action. So action, as you can see here, it's capitalized the first letter, and it does everything else in lowercase, which is the way that you would want it to be. Okay? So you have it that way. That is the way your action is. So the action is the description of the setting, of the environment, and the characters that might be in that space. So in your action scene, you're basically doing, and again, I don't want to sort of get bogged down on this because it can get quite complicated in terms of what you can do in the action section. But we're going to keep it very simple and say main house. Let's say it is a mansion-like building set back against lush land, or let's say a lush garden landscape. Okay, let me mute this. All right, so we'll just go a basic description. So a mansion-like structure set back against a lush garden landscape. Okay, that's very simple, and I've got this here so I can just put a hyphen in there. That's very simple. And what you could do, and again, this is obviously for when we get to other stages, but what you could do is actually describe how it feels. So you could go tranquil, sunny, and the faint sound of traffic in the background. Okay, so I just did a little bit more than, for the sake of this video, we'll not get into that, but that is what you would do for the general action section. Now, the action section is also used for physical activity of characters. It's used for the movement of objects. It's used for so many things in these sections. But again, for the sake of this video, we're keeping it very simple. That is the action section. Now, as you can see, if you look at this, you already have. So what we can do here now is we're going to keep it very simple. So we're going to say a mansion. So what we can do here, we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to say a mansion-like structure sets back against a lush garden landscape. And I can put a hyphen in there. And a more advanced thing that you can do, and again, this video is primarily just to outline what the basic structure of a screenplay is. But what you can do here is that you can then describe how it feels. Now, I'm going to keep it really basic. So we just go tranquil, sunny, with the faint sound of traffic in the background. That's a very simple thing, but what you've done now effectively, and let me just put and sunny so I don't get this grammar issue here. And as you can see, what you've done is that you've clearly defined how this setting feels. You've clearly defined how the setting feels. And again, during the course and in the community, we'll talk a lot more about, so there's infinite possibilities of what you can do here to control mood, to control energy, to control feeling, to control emotion of the reader. So forgetting even what the movie is going to be, you can actually do a lot to control how the reader feels as they read it by manipulating the action block within the script. Again, the action block is also used for movement of characters, action sequences, movement of objects, situations changing. There's so much you can do in this. But again, we're keeping it simple. So after you do that now, the next thing you would do in the action block is you would describe the characters that are in that scene. So let us say a man, I'm going to keep it so simple, and let's call him a young man and wife walk out of the front door. Okay. So when you do this, what you also want to do is describe what the young man looks like. So again, this is all in the action section. So you would go let's say, black, or first of all, I usually do age. So 20s, black, suits and tie. And then his wife, we would go 20s as well, black, let's say t-shirts and jeans. Okay. And you do all of these in parentheticals, which I will talk about as well when it comes to another feature of a screenplay. But you always put those in parentheticals. So now what we've done is that we've done the action block and we've described it. And the next thing is that when you hit return, you could do more action if you want to, but that's not what we're going to do. You hit return, and then in Final Draft, you hit return again. And this is where the beauty comes in. You see that? It gives you all these options of all the different kinds of screenplay features you can choose from. So when you do this, you can either go down to character, or I usually just press C. So you can press C and you go to your character. Now, and again, guys, remember this. This is very important. Whatever you call your character in the character section has to correspond to what you named them. Okay, it's asking me to name the screenplay. So let's call this a screenplay, just for the sake of, let's call it script. All right. So you've got to correspond to what you called him. So let's say he's called Young Man, and then you hit return, and then it goes to dialogue. So remember, here it's capitalized, and you go C to make it to do your character who's going to speak, because it's your dialogue section. So you do the character and you hit it again, and now it's in your dialogue. As you can see, the dialogue is indented from the main structure of from the action section to denote that it is a dialogue section. And we're just going to keep it simple again. Let's say, see you after work. Hit return again, and it goes here. So you could put more action, but you hit return again, hit C, and then you put wife. Again, remember that wife is corresponding to what you called the character earlier there in the action block. Hit return again. Should I bring your, let me see, should I bring your brief? Let me say, should I bring the car or will you take the bus? Question mark. Okay. Now hit return again. And now you want to say how he reacts to it. And what you would do is you would then just say, young man smiles, kisses her, hit return again. See, young man, I haven't taken the bus in months. And then return again, wife, fine, or rather, okay, I'll bring the car. Okay. And there you have it. So what I've done now is I've shown you dialogue. I've shown you slug line, which is there. I've shown you the action section of a screenplay. I've shown you the character section where the character dialogue, and you've created your character and you're doing the dialogue. I've shown you the dialogue section as well. And those things are all extremely important. And now what you can do, and this is where the parentheticals come in. Parentheticals are important for so many things. So you could now, a parenthetical usually would, it can come into so many places. You can put it next to the character. When you hit a parenthetical, a bracket, it gives you the option. Again, I will break down what all of these mean, but they give you different kinds of scenarios: voiceover, off screen, on screen, continued, subtitle, text. You can even create your own denominators, which I do when I want to talk about flashbacks and things like that. That's what a parenthetical is. So I'm going to use a parenthetical to show you two ways of using a parenthetical in dialogue here. So new character again, young man there, and then you go voiceover. You see VO, hit enter, that's voiceover. So now, in movies, when somebody is essentially talking to themselves or is a narrator of a situation that happened in the past, and we've seen a bit of the scene, that is what this denotes, because this is the voiceover of the scene that we're seeing. So it's the man's voice that we're hearing. So you hit the voiceover and he goes, it didn't matter how many times I told her, she always asked me if I was going to take the bus. Okay? Now, that is not something the wife would hear. That is something the audience would hear. And when we read that as a reader, we know that his wife is not hearing that. Like, this is voiceover. That is very important. And that's a powerful way of using a parenthetical. You can also use a parenthetical here where if you want to create a pause, so you go P is parenthetical and you go beats. Again, I'll tell you what a beat is, but that is where you take a beat, you take a pause. You use a parenthetical for that. Regards, or rather, let's think about this, was going to take the bus. Sometimes, or rather, let's say regardless, it was one of the things I loved about her. Okay, not that that makes sense, guys, so don't judge me on that piece of dialogue. I'm just giving you a little example here of how that works. But anyway, that is how you use a parenthetical in those situations. And there are so many ways you can use it. Like I said, you can use a parenthetical where you denote a flashback. Let's say, for example, here I could go, actually, I'm not going to do that here. That wouldn't work. So now we're going to talk about transitions, which is the final main part of a basic screenplay features. Transition is where you're transitioning from one scene to another, from one page to another, transitioning to another scenario, another location. So you'd hit enter and hit enter again, and you press T, and T puts transition on the right-hand corner of the screen, which essentially tells you that it's a transition. Now, there's so many of them. So if you type C, you get cut to, you get F for fade in, fade out, dissolve to, back to, match cut to, jump cut to, fade to black, smash cut to black, time cut. I will dedicate another module to describing and explaining exactly what each of these transitions are, how you can use them, again, to control the pacing of your script, the feeling of your script, the feeling of your story, and the reception of your story from the reader. But for the sake of this, we're just going to do the simple one of, let's say we will do a fade out. Okay, so that's fades out the scene. It's a classic fade out. So that's if you want to end something and you don't want to do a crazy transition. Cut to is what I use sometimes as well. And that's if you want to do a cut to something. I don't think it's as necessary, but when you have a transition, you can actually put what you want to cut to after the colon, or what you want to fade to after the colon. So you could say that what he liked about it. So you could say cut to a, okay? So because he talked about the bus, they've had a conversation about the bus, you might decide to do a cut to a bus. I don't tend to do that because I think it's more effective if you hit return and I go exterior bus station, outside a busy outside station. Let's just say that, a station. Okay, and then you proceed to describe the bus and the station and so forth in the action scene. That is effectively the same thing as a cut to, because in the production, if you're producing the project, the editor would cut from the previous scene to the next scene. I think what's helpful for me, because I edit as well, is that I pretty much understand how a lot of these things would be interpreted because I'm also an editor. Now, for writers, and I'm assuming a lot of you who would be watching this are not editors as well, or directors, which I also do. It's very, very important to be very clear about what you're writing, because you're not the one who is going to be executing these things. So a lot of these principles that I've described here, it's important that you embed them into your DNA. Rewatch this video, rewatch this video, rewatch. Get them really, really deeply embedded, because these are the building blocks upon which everything works and functions when you're writing a script. Everything I've just told you is basically what every single page of every single script is going to be utilizing. Now, again, the biggest movies in the world that have ever been made, the biggest blockbusters to the smallest films, everything I described in this video are the building blocks for the screenplays of those movies. Great, guys. Okay, so remember to like, share, subscribe. There are so many modules, so many videos, and so many techniques and tips and tricks that I will be conveying on this channel, the Screenwriters Workshop. If you want to join the community, you will go to, if you want to join the community, you can go to the screenwritersworkshop.net and become part of the learning community that I have there, where I am your guide. I'm there available for questions. You can ask me questions directly, but I walk through step by step all of the processes and all of the tips and tricks I've learned over the last 20 years in terms of how to write effective screenplays that sell. If you want to make a business out of this, you want to make a career out of these, these are things you should know. All right, guys, till the next time.